So, my guess is that many of you feel a good deal of self doubt, perhaps, and anxiety about how well you are doing in terms of feeding yourselves and your families. We hear a lot of do's and don'ts about how to eat, along with a lot of conflicting information. So, no wonder many of us feel like we're always failing when it comes to eating well. And maybe that's why you're here today, right? Maybe this concept of healthyish eating really resonated with you because it sounded like a more relaxed and forgiving approach to eating. And you would be right, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. Okay. And healthyish eating is all about ditching these ideas about good and bad foods, right and wrong ways to eat. Okay. And it also focuses on honoring our kind of individual realities in terms of, how much time and energy we have to devote to preparing food for ourselves. Okay. So healthy eating question mark, right? So again, I'm going to push back a little bit on what this idea we collectively have about what healthy eating should look like. All right. That's where we're going to start today. And one way I like to do this is to Google images under the search term healthy eating. And it's pretty funny to me what comes up with these images, and that's what we're going to look at. I find them especially instructive to understanding why we view healthy eating as something that's kind of a challenge, something that is not fun, right? Something that is hard to do. And these images you find reinforce that, okay? And this is important because our feelings of disappointment and failure that we have around food and eating stem from these kind of unrealistic expectations about what healthy eating can and should look like. So let's look at some of these pictures. Okay, so here we are. We have somebody in the kitchen. Looks like they have their apron strapped on and they are ready to spend, hours in the kitchen cutting up all their, fruits and vegetables, right? So we get this idea that maybe healthy eating has to be very time consuming. And we also get the idea healthy eating might need to be something that we're preparing everything from scratch, right? We have to cut up our own vegetables, and doing anything less than that is just cheating and not doing it right, okay? There's actually a joke in the dietetic community among us dietitians about the smiling people eating salad. There are lots of images out there of happy, smiling people eating their salad. And it's great if you like salad and you're eating salad and you enjoy it. And certainly it is packed with nutrients, right? But this idea that we have to only eat salad if we're healthy eating and we have to love it while we're eating it is, again, something that comes up a lot. Okay. Healthy eating also looks like this. No, I can't have any donuts. I always have to choose this apple instead of the donuts. Okay. So again, leading to this idea of deprivation, right? And a little bit of kind of suffering. Okay. And then finally, this kid here with his plate of vegetables. I have to eat my very plain veggies, right? Maybe that's what healthy eating looks like or feels like. But honestly, I would look like this kid too. If someone gave me plain vegetables without any like ranch dressing or cheese to put on them, I would be pretty annoyed too. So Cassandra says this is her. Okay, yeah, this kid's me too. There's no way I'm sitting there eating plain steamed veggies with nothing on it. It's not happening. And it's okay if you don't want to do that either. So that's what we're going to talk about. All right. So our food culture, I want to talk a little bit about that. I've already kind of alluded to it with, looking at these images and what kind of messages they give us. But what's really interesting about our food culture here in America, especially when we compare ourselves to other countries, is that we have the greatest worry about our food and the greatest dissatisfaction with what we eat. So we have the worst of both worlds. We are worrying and fretting about every piece of food we're putting in our mouths, and we're not even enjoying anything when we're eating it. Okay, so needless to say, we experience a lot of guilt and anxiety around our food choices. And I will say, this is a little bit unique to our food culture here in the United States for sure. Another issue with our food culture is this kind of reductive focus on nutrients and numbers. So we tend to think about food in terms of just, what it gives us, how many calories is it? And, what are the macronutrients? How many carbs and proteins and fat grams does it have? What vitamins and minerals does it have? Which is, again, a legitimate part of nutrition and deciding what you're going to eat or not. But again, it's overly reductive, right? And it's really just looking at food in a very narrow lens. And this kind of approach makes it hard to have a healthy, enjoyable relationship with food and eating, okay? And with the advent of all the technologies we now have in terms of, food tracking apps and all of that, we can have all this data about food at our fingertips, right? And it's more data than we know what to do with, really, or could even use in a constructive way, and often gets us fixated on the wrong thing. So a lot of these apps, I do like to urge some caution with using them because they can tend to exacerbate kind of that self-doubt and anxiety we already talked about. And finally, there's a theory, a very real theory, that all this worry and stress about healthy eating may have a more profound effect on our health than the actual food we consume, right? Because it creates this kind of underlying chronic state of stress. We are always worried about, oh, am I eating the right thing? Is this the best thing to eat? Is this good or bad for me? Is this going to make me gain weight or not? Right? Well, we are constantly living like that and making our food choices based on that. It's very stressful. And we don't think about it that way, but it is. And our body recognizes it that way as chronic stress. And we know what physical effects, harmful effects stress can have on the body. It can cause inflammation. It can cause increased blood pressure, dysregulation of your blood glucose levels or diabetes. It can cause higher risk of heart disease. So it's kind of profound to think that, we're getting to a point where our worry about the food is possibly more harmful than the food we're actually consuming, no matter what that food is. Okay. So as we move into talking about what healthyish eating is and how we can embrace it and practice it, right? I want to share a few thoughts to ground us, right? They're kind of thoughts that we really have to buy into to be able to move forward with healthyish eating. And you might find that maybe you're not quite there yet. Maybe it's hard for you to wrap your head around these thoughts and principles and really believe them. So that might be the first step. It's just really working on embracing these kind of grounding thoughts. So the first thought is, if you are trying, you are not failing. And that has been my experience in working with hundreds of clients over the years, that if they are trying to do well, they are trying to make better choices and do the best they can, they're usually doing pretty well. Okay. There is a quote I actually saw from Albert Einstein similar to this that says, "You never fail until you stop trying." You never fail until you stop trying. So that's really the danger, is just not giving up, just to keep trying, right? The other part of this is that you're doing better than you think, right? So even when you're trying, a lot of people are feeling, oh, but it's just not good enough. This is, I'm still not getting it, right? But you're doing better than you think. We are so hard on ourselves when it comes to, eating and food, right? And if we think about how we would treat other people who are making similar efforts, how we would talk to friends and family who are trying to improve their eating habits, we'd probably never talk to them in the way we talk to ourselves about it, right? We are so demanding and hard on ourselves. So I guarantee you're doing better than you're giving yourself credit for, most likely. This is a big one. There is no such thing as a perfect diet. You will read many articles to the contrary of this. You will see many things on social media that make you, think think this is not true, but it is. There is no such thing as a perfect diet. There is no one size fits all. What is ideal for one person will not be ideal for another. And that is kind of every person's journey to figure out for themselves. But we don't even have, I'll give you an example in our practice at UK Health and Wellness. We don't have meal plans, for example, that we give to people. People ask us often for that. Well, give me a meal plan. Just tell me what to eat. Well, I can't do that because it's all very much dependent on kind of your specific health needs, your preferences, the time and resources that you have, all of these things. So there's just no one size fits all. And then finally, also very important, it's when it comes to eating and again, health promoting eating, it's what you do most of the time that counts, right? Many people view healthy eating, I think, as kind of like a tightrope. That's the analogy I like to use, right? Where you're picturing yourself on this tightrope, taking all the right steps, and all of a sudden, oh man, I ate that donut for breakfast, and now I have just fallen off the tightrope. It's all over. Okay. And you feel like, yeah, with any, misstep, the efforts are completely derailed. But with Healthyish eating, eating happens on a continuum. You're not on or off anything, right? I hear a lot of people use that phrase, oh, I fell off the wagon, right? I'm using the tightrope analogy. Same thing. You're not on or off anything. You are somewhere on a continuum, somewhere in the process, and you're just trying to make progress and move forward, okay? All right, so like I said, these are big ones. These are kind of really radical ways of looking at eating for a lot of people, right? Especially if you've been kind of, steeped in diet culture or exposed to, a lot of this messaging that's out there. These can be, challenging to really wrap your mind around and truly believe in, but they're a good place to start. Okay, so from the best I can tell, the original use of the phrase healthyish eating came from Bon Appetit magazine. Of course, they also have a website. But they seem to be the ones who coined this phrase. And it's not that old, just a few years old. They call it delicious, comforting home cooking that just happens to be kind of good for you. And of course, like with any, phrase that's in our vernacular, Urban Dictionary picked it up. And so it's in there too. They define it as when something is sort of healthy. All right. But I like both of these definitions. I like that there is a balance between, especially with the Bon Appetit definition, they talk about both, taste and nutrition and trying to find a balance between the two. And that's very much what we're going to focus on here going forward. Their definition also talks about home cooking. And I don't want to, gloss over that either, because preparing food at home is really kind of one of the best ways you can optimize eating well, right? So that is really kind of an integral part of this healthyish eating too. Okay, so I showed you those images when we started about, what healthy eating looks like on the internet. I'm going to show you some pictures of what I think healthyish eating looks like and the kinds of pictures I wish would come up when I Google healthy eating compared to those ones we saw earlier. So let's take a look at some of these. Oh, look, there's the carrots with the ranch. Think back to that sad little kid with his plate of vegetables, right? Here we have some carrots with ranch. Maybe you like hummus with your carrots. That would be another option. Sure. Here's some popcorn. Popcorn is a great whole grain, full of fiber, actually quite healthy for you. And it's okay to put a little butter on it. You don't have to eat it plain. You want a little salt and butter, that's fine, right? We're just trying to find a balance between plain popcorn and movie popcorn, right? That's yeah. But yeah, I can't eat plain popcorn. I would never expect anyone else to. Plain old butter on salt is fine. Grilled cheese. Use some natural cheese, maybe not the processed cheese like American cheese and Velveeta, using a nice, cheddar or something like that, putting it on some whole wheat bread. That makes a grilled cheese actually a fairly balanced option, okay? Brussels sprouts with bacon. So it's a quintessential combination, really timeless. Might be a way to get, Brussels sprout haters or any veggie hater in your family to eat some veggies, sprinkle a little bacon on there. The dinner in my house last night was actually pasta with broccoli and bacon mixed in last night. That was legit our dinner. Use whole wheat pasta. It had a little bit of a cream sauce with some Parmesan, put a bunch of broccoli in there, some cooked bacon. Okay, that was a meal. And it was fine. But everybody loved it because it had some bacon. All right, here's our fruit, maybe apples dipped in caramel. And chicken. You don't have to just eat plain baked chicken. You can make a little sauce. You can put something on it, okay? So these are all to me what healthyish eating should look like, all right? And again, we have to honor, like I said, both nutrition and taste. As we went through these images, I tried to point out what are the redeeming nutritional qualities about each of these things. They all have some, absolutely, right? These are all what I would call nutrient dense types of options, right, for snacks or meals. But they are also things that are appealing to a lot of people, maybe not all of them individually to each of you, but in general, things that people would find appealing, right? As opposed to, again, that plain plate of vegetables. And the truth is, we can only really choke down plain veggies and baked chicken for so long. And I use this example because I have so many clients who have come to me saying, I just can't eat healthy. It's too hard. It's too boring. I'm burnt out. And I ask them, well, what does healthy eating mean for you? What are you eating? And I hear that a lot. Chicken and green vegetables. That's their dinner every night. And it's plain, right? There's no sauces. Yeah, there's no ranch dressing, none of this. Okay. And so, yeah, if that is what your idea of healthy eating looks like, that is going to feel hard, right? And it is going to be unsustainable, of course, when you have to sacrifice taste for nutrition or feel that you have to, right? That's not going to work. That's not going to last. Okay. And then what happens when we're sick of eating those things? Many of you probably have experienced this yourself, right? You swing back the other way to the other end of that continuum, right? So all of a sudden you've gone from maybe eating, plain veggies and chicken for dinner every night to burgers and fries or pizza or all these yummy things you've been depriving yourself of because you have been so, miserable trying to make yourself kind of eat according to this definition of healthy eating, right? And a lot of people stay stuck in this cycle going back and forth, right? Between these extremes of the continuum. So that is where healthyish eating comes into play. It helps us find that middle ground of that continuum, that spectrum, right? That can be both sustainable and enjoyable. All right. But, it's really sad because I see a lot of people who go through that experience of the swings back and forth and having this, rigid idea of what healthy eating looks like. And it just continues to just reinforce their belief that they cannot eat healthy. Right. And so it kind of becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's where it becomes very dangerous, right? When we're trying to talk about building long-term habits. So Julia Child, she was an icon. She was a genius in many ways. And she got this one right, in my opinion. Moderation, small helpings, sample a little bit of everything. These are the secrets of happiness and good health. And I truly, truly believe that. And I know this message of moderation is boring. That's why I put it in capital letters. As a dietitian, I am always spreading this message of moderation. And I know people think it's boring. They're probably sick of hearing about it, but it's the truth about what works long term. Okay. Yeah, I admit it's not flashy. Okay. It doesn't get much attention. Doesn't make a lot of money. So if you think about the messages we hear out there in the media, a lot of this is about making money too. In moderation, that message, it's not going to do it, right? But the problem with this message of moderation is that it's like the advice to wear a pair of sensible shoes, right? Practical, but easily ignored, right? But like I said, It's what works. And what moderation looks like for you, though, may take some work to figure out. And we talked about that earlier, right? When we talked about this idea that there is no such thing as a perfect diet or a one size fits all diet, why I don't and can't give meal plans to people, because it doesn't work that way. Each person has to figure out what moderation looks like for them. What way of eating makes you feel good, both mentally and physically, right? Again, it's going to be in terms of what you're eating, how much, when you're eating, the types of food you're eating. That's going to be all different person to person. Okay. But the problem is we don't want to do that work, right? Like I said, that's why a lot of people ask us for meal plans, because it feels easier to have someone tell them what to eat. That's why people say, just give me a meal plan. Just tell me what to eat. I don't want to think about it. I mean, I hear these words out of people a lot. And if you're feeling that way, I don't blame you either. Because again, this concept of healthy eating has become, kind of pathological. Maybe you like the idea of not having to think about it or make these choices for yourself day to day and work through that process. But again, that's not what's going to be sustainable and enjoyable, right? That's not going to build lifelong habits. So healthyish eating, again, is a way to empower you to be able to practice that moderation on a day-to-day basis. So like we've been talking about, right, there are a lot of benefits of healthyish eating. One of the primary ones being, we get some balance, right? It's not all or nothing. We get some nutrient dense stuff along with maybe some less nutrient dense stuff, but that's what helps us enjoy our food and be able to keep eating in this sustainable way. It also means that we value enjoyment. Like I said, we're finding a union between good nutrition and good taste. And that is, again, kind of the heart of healthyish eating. And again, if you think about what our culture has taught us, what we talked about with food, it's that, if we have something that we think tastes good, it must be bad for us, right? Because again, healthy eating is plain veggies and plain baked chicken, right? So if it tastes good, man, it must not be good for us. And we should probably feel guilty about having eaten it, right? Because again, our standard definition of healthy eating has shunned, the idea of dipping your apples in caramel and dipping your carrots in ranch, right? So of course we feel guilty if that's our definition, and we think that healthy food can't be enjoyable. But with healthyish eating, we do enjoy our food and there's no guilt about it, right? And again, that's a huge part of this, kind of idea of that, healthy eating, that, we have to feel guilty about eating foods. And there's so much guilt that comes with our food choices. And so healthyish eating helps us kind of get rid of that. The other big thing healthyish eating does is help people, with creativity and flexibility with their meal planning, right? So how often do I hear, oh, I don't know what to make. I can't think of anything to make. Nobody in my family, can agree on anything to eat, right? I'm sure many of you struggle with that, whether it's just preparing food for yourself that you're kind of excited about, or something that, your partner and kids will eat. That could be tough, right? If you're in this very rigid kind of, ideology about what healthy eating is. But when you can open things up, like we saw in those pictures, and make some sauce for your chicken or add some bacon to your veggies, right? This opens up a whole new world of meal planning possibilities. And it also makes it easier to create meals that families can enjoy together. And I believe in that very strongly. People, coming together around food, that being part of, what you do as a family, the benefits of eating together at home, right? So I always want to find opportunities for people to be able to do that as easily as possible. And again, I hear so many clients say, I can't get my family to eat healthy. Maybe some of you have felt that way before, right? Uttered those words. But again, if you are serving your family plain veggies and baked chicken or fish every night, right? Of course, there's going to be pushback. They're not going to like that. It's not going to be any fun. And then you're going to feel defeated, right? Like, oh, I tried to have healthy eating at home, but nobody likes it. And then you just give up. Okay. So this is kind of, again, the domino effect that this rigid thought about healthy eating has, right? And healthyish eating, again, gives you the flexibility to be able to compromise, right? Make compromises with the other people in your family who are sharing those meals, and not worry that, okay, I'm going to throw in a little bacon so my kid eats these veggies, right? You're not going to worry about that. That's okay, right? You're at peace with that. And it's going to get everybody, hopefully, to be able to kind of enjoy the meal, right? And all of this together, hopefully, reduces, again, a lot of that stress, worry, anxiety, and self doubt that we have around eating. Okay, so one of the best ways to practice healthy-ish eating is to become what I call a satisficer. Now, I didn't make this phrase up. I forget the name of the gentleman who did some decades ago, but it's a great phrase. And as you can probably tell, it's a very clever mashup of the words satisfy and suffice. All right. The idea with this, when you're satisficing, is that you're making a choice that is good enough. Okay. And people who satisfice are actually very satisfied with their choices, right? They don't feel that buyer's remorse sometimes, right? Compared to people who are trying to find the perfect choice. Satisficers, they simply look for the minimum outcome that they are willing to accept for a particular decision. If it's the outcome that they'd be okay with, even if it's not the perfect choice or the best possible choice, okay? And again, when you apply this to food, it's a very different way of approaching, food and making those decisions for a lot of us. The opposite of a satisficer, some of you may feel you are in this category right now. The opposite of a satisficer is a maximizer. These are people who are always trying to optimize their decision and make the best choice, right? Sometimes I feel like this goes along with being a perfectionist in general. I see that sometimes with my clients, kind of an overlap between these things. But maximizers, very interestingly, are actually less satisfied with their choices. Remember how I said satisficers actually are pretty, cool with their decisions and just make it and move on? Well, these maximizers, if you're always trying to find the perfect choice, right, the ideal choice, you are going to struggle because you're always going to have this fear of missing out, right? The FOMO. You're always going to feel like there was a better choice. I could have made a better choice. I'm missing out on something better, right? And so what the research actually tells us is that being a satisficer is also good for our mental health. We're going to be much happier about our overall kind of decision making. And when this comes to food, that's what we need and want, right? That's what we've been talking about. So what does satisficing look like, right? What does this look like in the real world? I have some thoughts, some examples. So maybe you ran out of time to prepare the dinner that you were going to make, right? Maybe it was a, recipe you had at home and, maybe it was going to take about 30 minutes or so to make, but even that way, but maybe you forgot to defrost the meat and that's going to add time, or maybe you got held up at work and now you really have to rush to get a dinner on the table. There's multitude of reasons, right? For example, dinner plans go awry. So what do a lot of us do normally, right? Oh, well, I'll just swing by and get some fast food or takeout, or we'll order a pizza or whatever, right? Because again, we're operating in these extremes, this all or nothing. Well, if I can't make the meal I plan to make, then just forget it. I'm going to get the pizza, get the burgers, right? We're not thinking again about that continuum. Where is there a middle ground here, right? To find a compromise, okay? So maybe this would be one thing I've done. You swing by Kroger, wherever, get a rotisserie chicken, right? They're hot, ready to eat. They're pretty delicious. Maybe pick up one of those like bag salad kits, right? That has everything you need and one thing. And you grab that and you go. That can be dinner. It might not be the dinner you really wanted, might not be what you planned on, but that's okay. If it's something that you're still willing to eat and gets the job done, then you've accomplished it. You still have a dinner that's, nutritionally balanced and affordable. Maybe you've been trying to eat plain yogurt. I see a lot of people do this because they think, again, this rigid idea of healthy eating says, oh, I can't get any yogurt that's sugar sweetened, right? I got to eat the plain yogurt, okay? Now if you're like me, I can't eat plain Greek yogurt. I don't know if anyone's ever tried that, but if you can, more power to you. But it is like eating sour cream by the spoonful or something to me. I just can't do it. Some people have the taste buds for the sour, and that's great. And I do like Greek, and I like Greek yogurt for the nutritional, benefit of the extra protein it gives you, right? That's why we often, encourage Greek yogurt. But I see people forcing themselves to eat plain Greek yogurt because they think they can't have something with sugar in it, right? So imagine all the possibilities you could open up for yourself if you said, okay, I'll get something that's flavored with some sugar in it, but just look for one that has minimal added sugar. And there are certainly plenty of those out there, right? They have a Chobani that's reduced sugar. They have a Siggi's that you may have seen that's, minimal sugar. So you still get some flavor, but you're still keeping an eye on that added sugar if that's what you were concerned about. Maybe you are pretty good about being a breakfast eater. But maybe you wake up too late to prepare your normal breakfast. So you grab a granola bar on the way out the door. It might not be your ideal choice, but I know if I skip breakfast completely, right, altogether, it's a bad start to the day, right? I start out real hungry and cranky, and it just, I'm on this bad cycle through the day, feeling hungry, having cravings, having a headache, low energy. So the goal here would still try to be to get something in your system. Maybe you can keep some healthier granola bars, something grab and go like that around, and still be able to have a breakfast. Okay. I want to share with you a story because we do have some time. One of my shining, satisficing moments, okay, when it comes to food, it's very clear to me. It happened very recently, within the past year and a half. I was traveling by air during COVID. And if anyone did that, right, that, the situation at the airports was real weird, right? And there was not a lot of food options, right? Because a lot of stuff was closed. So at some point during the pandemic, I was between flights in the Philadelphia airport, and I didn't have anything else with me. Sure, I could have done a better job of probably bringing some snacks along or whatever. I didn't. I needed some food. I knew I needed food. The only thing open in this terminal and that I had time to get was Smash Burger. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't really want like a hamburger and fries. Like that's the first thing I think of with Smash Burger, right? That's what most of us eat if we go there. I'm like, well, yeah, normally that might sound delicious, but right now I'm about to go sit on another plane and have still to drive home, and it's going to be late. And the thought of just eating with the greasy burger and the fries at that moment, I just knew I wouldn't feel great, right? And I didn't want that. So I thought, all right, but I still kind of wanted something hearty and comforting, right? So I'm looking at the menu, like, all right, what else is there? And I see they have salads. Like, okay. In the picture, they looked good. They looked like very colorful, and they look like real greens in there. Oh, okay. And they had two, but I thought, well, I need some protein, right? Again, protein being an important thing that's going to help fill you up. And I see that they have two options. You can get baked chicken on it, right? Or this piece of fried chicken on top of it. And I said to myself, that is perfect. I am going to get this big piece of fried chicken on top of my salad, and this is going to be perfect. I will have my salad, right? I'm going to feel good about that. I'm going to enjoy something kind of fresh and crispy because I've been traveling, but I'm also going to get that like deliciousness of that kind of fried chicken that I'm after. And I'm still going to get the protein, right? And I tell you what, I made that decision so purposely. And again, I mean, I'm a dietitian, but I don't always make decisions quite that thought through, right? I'm human too. But in that moment, man, it was a good decision, and I enjoyed it so much. It was the perfect thing, right? So it's just an example about when you are in these less than ideal circumstances, right? That if you still just take a moment to think through, right? What are the options, right? What, like I said, is the minimum when we're talking about what's the minimum I'm willing to accept? Mine was, it can't be greasy burger and fries. It has to be something with some nutrition that's not going to make me, weigh me down and make me sleepy and feel bad for the rest of the trip, right? And I achieved that. And I got something that would help satisfy my hunger and that was satisfying to me, my taste buds. And there you go. So I like to share that story because I think I was really proud of myself in that moment. Even as a dietitian, we have these moments where we feel that way. All right. So putting this into practice, setting your minimum requirements, right? And again, this may vary by situation. right? You may have different requirements based on, dinners. You may have different requirements, like my example with traveling, right? I got to change what my expectations and minimum requirements are, maybe depending on the situation. That might also be very relevant right now with holiday time approaching. I think this is a time of year where people do tend to, fret a little bit about, oh my goodness, there's all these treats around and things I don't usually eat. I'm going to these parties or get-togethers or potlucks, and there's all this stuff, right? So, maybe you go into these situations thinking about your minimum requirements. Maybe I think, all right, I got to eat, some fruits or vegetables, but I can still, enjoy some sweets too, right? Set what is the minimum standard, okay, that you're going to be happy with. Is the minimum standard really going to be I'm not going to eat any sweets? Is that realistic? Is that going to be fun? Probably not. Okay. So again, you got to kind of take it on a situation by situation basis, right? Kind of like that breakfast example we looked at. The minimum requirement just might be that you ate something before you ran out the door, right? It can be a pretty low bar, but again, that's up to you to decide what that is. Again, you're searching for options that meet those requirements. And we went through some of those examples, the one about picking that rotisserie chicken and salad kit up on the way home for dinner, right? That's something that still is affordable. You have to maybe, budget is a concern, right? Or one of these requirements. So you don't want to spend a lot of money eating out, but you still want to be able to eat a decent meal, right? So that meets a requirement such as that. And it still, again, was nutritionally balanced if that's one of the requirements. The really important part of satisficing is to stop searching when you find a satisfactory option, right? Because that's when you turn into a maximizer, when you start looking at all the other options and thinking, oh no, there's something better out there. Let me keep looking. This is the critical part that you have to make the deal with yourself, that you are going to stop searching as soon as you find a thing that meets those minimum requirements. That's the hard part. Again, especially if you're in that mode of like, I'm going to miss out, or you're a perfectionist, right? But this is where the magic happens, stopping as soon as you find the option. And then, of course, finally, being able to view that as a win. Instead of saying, oh, well, it wasn't quite what I wanted or wasn't as good as I thought it should be, knowing that you went through the process. You set the requirements, you looked for the options, you picked the thing that met it. And that's a win, right? And not second guessing yourself about it, okay? Let me give you a couple examples and then we're going to actually be done here. You think about going to the grocery store, right? And you've gone to the cereal aisle. It's overwhelming. I mean, I don't even know how many different cereals there are to choose from, right? And you're standing there thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to pick a cereal, right? You could spend 15 minutes trying to pick out a healthy cereal that you think you'll like. So maybe you got to figure out, again, in that situation, what is the minimum requirement? Maybe I need something that is hopefully, fairly lower sugar. Maybe you have some standard there. Maybe it's got to be whole grain, give you some fiber. Fiber is going to be something that's going to help you feel full. So maybe, that's the minimum requirement, not too much sugar, some fiber. You find something that fits that and you move on, right? So instead of no longer spending 15 minutes in the cereal aisle trying to pick something, you can really, kind of streamline that decision making. I'll share with you too, when it comes to, we talk a lot about the family dinners and the meal times, right, together that you're sharing with other people. That is where, again, a lot of this kind of compromise happens. And I have set, I guess, over time, kind of unintentionally, some minimum requirements for meals that I prepare for my family. So everyone has to have a good chance of liking it enough to eat it once. So if it's something I've never made before, I have to really feel like, okay, based on what I know about people's preferences, they're willing to eat it, right? Or at least try it. It has some redeeming nutritional quality. And I kid you not, you guys, I'm a dietitian, but that is my standard. It has something good to give me, right? Last night, I got some good carbs, a healthy fiber from my whole grain pasta. I got some good veggies with my broccoli. I wasn't really focusing on that, little bit of extra saturated fat or sodium from the bacon. I was focused on what's it going to give me? What's the good stuff it's going to give me? And I'm just focused on that, right? So it has to have some redeeming nutritional quality. And it has to get done in 30 minutes with minimal ingredients. If I see a recipe that's like this long with all these ingredients that I don't have or normally use, it's not happening. Okay. It's just not. Those are my minimum requirements. And there's also some things I am and am not willing to sacrifice. So I will sacrifice some enjoyment. I have learned over time that not every meal can be everybody's favorite. And for a long time, I pressured myself into thinking it needed to be, right? That every meal I served to, maybe my husband and my kids had to be like, oh, this is great. It's not going to be like that, as unrealistic expectations, right? That was setting me up for some of that disappointment. So again, they like it enough to eat it. That's the standard. I will sacrifice, like I've said, some nutrition. Yeah. Would it be better to have chicken or fish maybe in place of the bacon? Yeah, nutritionally, I guess, but the dish wouldn't be the same. I wouldn't like it the same, right? There's something magical about broccoli and cheese and bacon together. So, yeah, I will sacrifice some nutrition and find, again, that union between taste and nutrition. But I will not sacrifice quick and simple. It always has to meet those criteria. And I'm not gonna, sacrifice that. So, in closing, I want to encourage you guys to be gentle with yourselves. This is, like I said, a radical kind of revolutionary way to view eating for some of us, because again, we've been so used to being hard on ourselves, using this all or nothing mentality, viewing food as good or bad. Eating is a way that we're doing it right or wrong. And that's where all that self-doubt, anxiety, and stress comes from. So by embracing healthy-ish eating, you'll help you'll be able to be forgiving and flexible, not only with your food choices, but also with yourself, right? And hopefully make healthy eating long-term a more enjoyable process. And I always love to end with that quote, right? We're always looking for, again, the good enough, progress, not perfection.